Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Monday. It's May the 13th. Uh, Another kind of um, I wouldn't necessarily call this a weak trading range, a weak channel, but we're steadily going higher, making higher lows and higher highs pretty much all day. And the only difficult part was when you first started, you may not have had the trend channel yet. You might have just been looking at this as a range. Let me show you. When you first come in and that's what it's looking like, then you got to consider, it looks kind of like a trading range. You might have drawn this line across the top, but, and it looks like it could fit on the bottom, but you're not sure yet. At least I wasn't. And, you always want to be sure before so really I traded it as a trading range um, early on. And what I did was, what I try to do is to draw these short-term trend lines. And if you drew the one today, you might have drawn it more like that. That's where I really originally have it. And that's probably still right. But it could have been a little bit more over to angle to the right. Generally a lot of times it's going to be your closes on these shorter term ones, or it's going to be off the first couple of bars. So you really might have drawn it, this first one, like that. And that fits too. And then you get the break and you get the move to a new high. But there was more than one reason to short here. You had you got the highs, you've got all this overlap, you got a failed break higher. I like going short here for multiple reasons. One, the trend line, the break, and then a chance to get short. And you may, when this ended without breaking lower, you might have waited for this bar. And then when this one broke lower, with all that overlap, I would have what I did was drop a limit order in there, a tick or two into this. I think I dropped it. I tried to keep it one tick below that former high. It still would have got filled, but you can't get too greedy with a limit order. And somebody sent me an email today asking me, why don't you use limit orders all the time or stop limit orders? And the reason is because you will miss some of the best trades doing that. It's the ones that you aren't quite sure that I like to drop a limit order in, or if there's a little overlap, because there's generally and what this was, you had this little overlap right here. It's a little congestion. We broke out, we pulled back and tested and went lower. So there were a couple of chances to get short in here. That's why I circled that whole group. But either way you entered, this had to be your signal bar, and your stop has to go up here. And as long as you did that, you could have ridden this. And I was thinking riding it all the way to the low. Didn't turn out that way, but that's what I was thinking. And you got a second chance to enter right here, a little pullback. It's like a little breakout pullback out of this end of it. Nice turnaround bar. Again, you might have waited on this bar, put your limit order one or two ticks into it, maybe right at the bottom of it since it didn't close, but it's still fairly bearish. And you can see it pulled back a little bit first and then went lower. And I'm guessing that that's one reason we went a little bit lower but didn't get all the way to the end, is they were pushing to get those 4 ticks from people that might have entered below that bar. And let's just see, I was in before that, but let's just say you entered below that bar, 25, and now you had a few ticks to spare there. So but you might have had the channel here too, and because I know that I was looking at it both ways, but by this time I was thinking more of a trading range. I'm thinking, hey, we're going to come back down and test these lows that are either here or here using the closes, or it could have even been here. You never know. I like to use the closes a lot because that's generally what will give you your best fit on a bounce off lows like that. But assuming that you had your channel, then you might have got fooled right here and went long. But if you were drawing your short-term trend line, you would realize, hey, we hadn't had a break yet. And we didn't get a break until here, and then look, we pulled back. We didn't go much lower, but that's still good enough to be a pullback. We broke out, pulled back, and then turned up. And so that's a great place to be thinking about going long. I would have liked to have seen it go to break lower first, but it didn't. And notice how we couldn't close. You know, it's kind of like a little breakout of this little area here and pull back again too. So, but anyway, the only thing that would have kept you out of this trade if you saw the channel was the fact that we didn't have a trend line break yet. And just like right here, if you entered before you had the break and the new high, you probably would have got stopped out. You just never know. That's the reason I try to follow those trend lines, you know, that my short-term ones. And if you'll draw, I get emails from people all the time saying, hey, now that I see that and draw those, it's helped me tremendously. And it really will help your trading a lot. And that's just my opinion. And a lot of times they're right off the first couple of bars. Notice how that one's right off the first couple of bars, that one. Or maybe they're right off the first few closes, and then, so you never know exactly how they're going to be. Even this one here, if you were here trading at this time, notice that if you came right off those closes, you got the break, the new low, and then it reversed. And you got the trend line, the break, the new high, and the reverse. You're coming down, you get the break, the little pullback retest, and then the reversed. And this one was a little harder to see the retest. You might have got fooled on that, but you shouldn't have got fooled on the break because you can see clearly. And generally, the way I like to verify it is to copy it and put it on both sides. And if it fits, then you know you got a pretty good fit. And you can see that fits down both sides right there. And so that'll help you. That'll help verify it for you. If it doesn't fit on both sides, then maybe you got a problem. So, and but that's generally how I find it. And then you had this channel. So that was the only thing that might have kept you out of that. Otherwise, you might have gotten tricked, and you might have got tricked both ways on this one, because it was a failed second entry long, almost, you know, type trade there, and then, you know, it breaks higher, so it traps people to the long side, and then it turns down. But then it didn't quite get a scalp to the other side, and it turns back up. You might have even thought about going long right there. I did, but I decided, you know what, we're not down here to these lows, and it's just might be a range day, so just sit tight. And then we get this bar, and if you try to get anything more than the top of that bar, you got left behind on that. And you know, there's just no other way to get that. And that's a good example of what happens if you use a limit order. You get left behind. So there was only one way to enter that, with a stop or a limit order right at the top, and it's a big bar, so it's kind of risky if you're not reading the price action right. And so you might have missed that trade, but that's a good example. Then we had this trade, the same thing again, except notice this one had a big stem, so it's a lot more risky. And notice you got these highs here. So on this one, you know, the only way you could enter this one was with a limit order. And that's the way I entered this one. I put my limit order one tick above that close, and I could have actually got another tick out of it. But I got enough to get out regardless. Pulls back, makes a double top. You don't want to go short yet. We're still looking for longs. So then you get a second entry long here. It's a little two-legged pull back to the EMA, but we did break the trend line. And again, you got a little doji here that didn't close quite on its high, didn't go back above this bar. So again, this is one you might use a limit order, because if you put a stop up here and you don't have room to get out before that double top, and you see what happened, it got right to that and it turned down. If you use the limit order, you could have gotten filled all the way down to the top of that bar, even when it came back here and it went back up again. So by being a little more conservative there and saying, hey, I'll either miss the trade or I'll get my limit order, still got a good scalp, no runners. Then, of course, they come down here and they trap everybody. This is just a double bottom with a little one-tick trap. You can see that right there. And that's what they do a lot of times when you get into, you know, when you start trending and you get into a range, that's what they'll do. Almost always they'll trap people. And so you got to be prepared for that. And I love those traps, because look what happens afterwards. They got everybody trapped, and off it goes to the upside. And where does it go? Right to our target across the top up here. And notice that if you'd drawn that trend line off those first couple of closes, you get a little break in here, move to a new high, and it gets that little bitty doji. I drew this one in green because it is a short on a long day, But if you're going to take one, this is a much more aggressive trade. So I drew it in green, but it's a great setup if you're reading this right. And that was a nice move back down. Notice that they came back and got the break-even stops like usual, and off it goes. And I was tempted to mark this one as short, but this one is even more risky than this one because you're back to the EMA. You don't know that you won't bounce off of it. You don't know that there's a lot of overlap right there. You do have your trend line to kind of keep you, but you don't know that that's not the new low, and you'll bounce from there and go higher. I just thought it was really risky entering there. Here you expect prices to come back to the EMA again. We're way overdue, but here you don't know. And, it's more in the middle of no man's land, and so sometimes they're better to skip. If you took it, it's a two-legged correction. It's the first break of the trend line. It's a little more risky if you took it. Maybe that's I'm not going to beat you up over that trade. But I wouldn't have, I just didn't think it was worth taking. And then you come down here and you get back to the lows again. By that time, I'd moved that to there. And I think that looks pretty good right there. We tried to go lower twice, then the second time. So there's really two chances to enter here. I liked entering above this bar here using a limit order. Once it broke above, drop a limit order at the top or a tick or two in. And you can see it came back. You could have got filled at least 2 ticks into it because I really thought we'd come all the way back up here. We may yet, but maybe we don't. But once you had the failed second entry short, you had to go long right there. And it took a minute to take off, but you see it was an easy trade. And then I haven't liked anything else since then. I definitely didn't like going short right there, even though it would have been a good trade. And I don't see anything here that I really like to the long side yet, even though we'll probably come back up here and at least taste these highs again. We could get a measured leg down. If that's leg one, we may, excuse me, we may get a measured leg down like that. But the bias is to the upside today. We keep trapping people lower, and it looks like we've trapped them again. Notice that those lows across there. And even if you use that as a low, that little one tick, and so they're working on trapping people, and then they take it off to the upside again. And that's why we stay with the trend and don't be trying to go short. And we may have a little break here, but it may not be enough of a break to, I didn't mess my line up. May not be enough of a break to matter yet. And it could be that this is the low right here, and this may be the first break. So I really tend to like it right across there. It kind of catches the closes, and then so that looks pretty good to me right across there. Kind of like that and think that looks pretty good. So, but you never know exactly where it's at unless you're bouncing right off of it every time, and that you can't find one spot where it's bounced directly off of it all day, really. Maybe close there. See, and we are still trying to work higher here, and that's what they do. They convince people that the trend's change, and they trap them in, and obviously there's some strong support right here because we've been playing both sides of that line all day, and that just extended over here, and they just trap people there again. And I guarantee you, a lot of people got short there, so don't fall for that. And you actually let me show you a couple of other things. This, you got one leg there, and then there's your second leg, and you see it's pretty close, tick or two different. So you might have found that target. That was another reason I liked that trade up there. Or you might have found that target by using this right here, and then you move that up there, and you see we didn't quite get it, but I may not quite. I would have called that the original range, I think. Let's just see how close that is. You see, and that's basically right where the closes were. So there are a couple different ways to find it, and but what I can do is continue to move this up to where you find, and you can see that really looks like more of the range now. So the next time if we get up there, we may actually get that, and this might have been the lows right here. And so you don't have to get it exactly right, but let's say you called that the lows and you measured that the highs, and that takes you to that one, to the tick, exactly. And so that's probably it right there. Um, so you don't have to get these lines exactly right. I like to get them where you get the most touches, especially when you start to see it on both sides. You can see the closes and how we're working both sides of that line across there. You could, you can actually see it right there too, but notice now we're not getting any closes over there. That's where I originally had it, and you could see it was working both sides of the line, and it just kind of worked higher. And that's what happens. So you don't have to get it exactly right. Just try to get it close, and generally it'll get you in the right place. And when you see these little traps like this, that really looks the way I would like it right there. You get the most touches on both sides right there, and you got a little trap here, you got a little trap here. They just go just enough to trap, to run the stops on the longs, and to trap in all the new shorts that think because it went below there, that's where you go short, and then they run it in the other direction. And that's just real common. So don't get trapped out or trapped in at the wrong places. That's why we don't enter there. So, but that's about it for today. Nothing else much to talk about. But draw these short-term trend lines because they will help keep you, like I said, I got an email from somebody that got trapped here, and that's the only thing that would have kept you out of that, really, other than the fact that this bar did not close on its high, and it didn't get back above this bar, which will usually happen. It's still on a lot of days. I would like to take that. I would take that trade right there. It's a second entry long. It's a bullish reversal bar off a suspected trend line. But at this point, this is not a real strong trend. It looks more like a trading range, so you got to be careful because that's just a little small trading range here, and that's what happened. They trapped people. So draw those, and if you had that trend line on there, you'd see there's no break of it and close till right here, and then you go a little higher and pull back, but it can't get below this trend line, and then you're going higher. So just remember to draw those lines, and that will help you a lot. And you can see it would have, they'd signaled all of these turns. There's the one coming down, the break, the new low, and then now we're working higher again. We're going up, the break, the new high, and we're working down, the break. We didn't get a new low here. We just had a retest. Couldn't go much lower right here, coming down. You get the break, a new low, and then we're moving up. So it works. And, sometimes they're easier to see than others. Sometimes they're like these. You don't get a new low necessarily. Actually, this one you did. It didn't happen until over here. So there were probably some traders that might have seen that as the trend line. Let's just see how that fits. And the way I always like to verify it, maybe. So some people might have seen it as that. You get the break, come down, and guess what? You get a new low by one tick, and it's headed the other way. So to me, this is more of your short-term one with the break and the new low. But obviously somebody may be seeing that as a channel, have been seeing that as a channel right there too. So you don't have to get it just right. You just have to be close. But sometimes if you're not close, you can be 100 miles in the wrong direction seeing things. So hopefully that makes sense. But it doesn't, I can show you all the time. You can draw your lines a couple different ways. And it doesn't matter where you drop this one, you still can pretty much get to the the same conclusion any way you do it. So I'm going to wrap it up. Not much else to talk about today. Another fairly good day. There weren't a lot of runners today, but there were a couple of them, and the ones we got were pretty good. And maybe tomorrow we'll get another one of those big, huge days in one direction or the other. We'll just have to wait and see. But I'm going to wrap it up. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.